Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Good morning, Thursday morning here on Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers, Shane Schillerberg on the board, running things over there at Hail Varsity Club this morning. A great venue for you to spend all of your time when you want to watch your favorite sporting event. Come to Hail Varsity Club, just a fantastic place for food, drink, and all things sports. Now, we start today with shocking news that completely blindsided Husker Nation. We realize this is sensitive information and could be triggering to some. If you or someone you know is struggling with issues like this, visit the Get Help tab on the Nebraska Coalition webpage. A number to dial is 888-799-7223 or text START to 88788. Mickey Joseph was arrested for strangulation and third-degree domestic assault yesterday afternoon. And Nebraska has currently placed him on administrative leave. Now, some may be asking, what is third-degree assault in Nebraska? What constitutes third-degree assault in Nebraska? So a person commits third-degree assault in Nebraska if he or she intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly causes bodily injury to another person or threatens another in a menacing manner.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a super difficult situation, I think, for a lot of people involved. And I went through this in my head a lot yesterday, just kind of the highs and the lows. Went back and looked at my text thread and kind of my conversations. And, we were just, Coach Joseph and I were going to get together 2 days ago for dinner. Then we talked yesterday about what his schedule was. He had the Zoom with Tulsa. I text him at 12:33. Are we, we good to go? I wanted to know about the Zoom. He said, I have to meet with Coach Satterfield, so let's hold off because I've got to have some serious discussions with, my family. And when I called him just to make sure that he was good, and, he'd hung up on me. So I didn't think much of it, but then the rest of the afternoon unfolded, and I read the timeline, and it started to make sense. And so for me, a ton of things went through my mind, right? It's family that I obviously know really well. Just had breakfast with Coach Joseph and his kids Friday. Saw Mickey's wife on the way to the workout facility at the hotel. Spoke there, gave high fives, some dabs, and so many things went through my mind yesterday. And first and foremost, I feel like this isn't about being right. This is about getting it right. And so there's a lot of information out there I think the general public isn't privy to, and that's okay. We'll see what happens today after the arraignment. And bond is set. You know, you cannot get out for domestic violence, which, I don't know if you know this, unfortunately, Andrew, and for some of our listeners, I know all too well. Went through an episode when I was in Lincoln. I did not make the trip to Michigan State. And I had a bad ankle and was at home. It was late, and had my significant other came by, had a secure building. It's probably, I don't know, 2:30 in the morning. There was a disagreement over some pictures. I had a huge shoebox full of pictures of her. I put them on my wall, and you know, proceeded to get into an altercation about whether to come in my building or not. And so I'm only telling you this to set the stage, right? Because it's personal to me. I've had domestic violence pop up in my family, and there's this situation that I can speak to firsthand. So when the situation was going on, there was some back and forth through the door, and turns out I go back upstairs to my apartment, and I'm the one that ends up calling the police. My license, there was some issues going on with my vehicle outside. And so in the meantime, my neighbors had buzzed her in. She came in when they came in. So there was like some pound on my door, and I came out, and I'm like, hey, you know, what's going on? And I remembered distinctly, like kind of her lunging at me to like get my stuff. So I'm like holding her hands, like protecting my face, like around her wrists. And I'm like, hey, you know, we're not doing this, yada, yada, yada. So I kind of tumble or whatever down the stairs, just trying to get out of the building because I have neighbors. So in the meantime, when I'm in the parking lot, you know, she kind of was just pushing and shoving, and there's some grabbing, and there were some scratches on my face. And so she ends up leaving. So about 20 minutes later, there's a knock on my door, and it's the Lincoln Police Department. Now we're talking probably, I don't know, 3:30 maybe. And they explained to me the situation, and they had checked out the police call. They had been to her house, and she had some marks on her wrist evidently from the restraint. And, you know, I wasn't familiar with the domestic violence policy, whatever. And so I was arrested. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Like,
What about my story?
This is totally backwards. And Lincoln Police Department, I felt, even then, I felt like they did a really good job. Like, I think if those officers are still on staff, like, they would tell you, super complicit. I felt like they explained it to me well, and I didn't think it was fair, but they explained it to me. And I said, hey, you know, that's not what it was, you know. So short story long, you know, I had to meet with Coach Osborne so that was Saturday night going into Sunday morning. Caught wind of it the next Monday because that night Lawrence Phillips had gotten in trouble as well. And I don't know the backstory about why my deal came out at the same time LP's did, but, you know, somebody had joked about the hair, you know, you want Benning's mugshot too and whatever, and Coach Osborne called it like 5:45 in the morning. It was 5:40 in the morning because I didn't think, you know, a whole lot of it. And my roommates came and got me out the next day, which was on a Sunday. And so I remember Coach Osborne telling me, and this is kind of the beginning of the nugget for Coach Joseph and their family situation, because there's a lot of feelings and kids involved. And he asked me my side of the story, and he told me that I better be telling the truth. He said, you better be telling me the truth or you're gone. So, you know, I was a little uneasy about that. I felt like, now remember, I'm young, and I don't see quite things as maturely as he did, right? I'm like, but I'm right, and this, that, and the other. It turns out, short story long, she didn't press charges. The state, the district attorney, picked up charges, Gary Lacey, at the time. And on a Tuesday or Wednesday, because my neighbors had caught wind, and this was unbeknownst to me, my neighbors came forward to say what they saw to support what I had told the staff. Short story long, they ended up dropping the charges, exonerated, whatever. It's not like the only people that issued like a public apology, it was on ESPN, and I remember Kurt McKeever doing an article in the Lincoln Journal-Star, and Tom Chattel did one here, you know, the smile back on Benning's face and this, that, and the other. And I immediately flashed back to that yesterday because a couple of things happened. Number one, I kind of figured out like who's for me and who isn't. But again, I'm going to eventually not make this about me. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how people just want information but don't really care about the fact that I'm extremely close with this family. So that was disturbing unto itself. The other thing was we don't really know what happened. We know that we know what the report says. I know that there are a couple of other adults in the house. We'll see what the police report says and how it actually has presented itself, what Priscilla will proceed to do today, what the other adults, both were in the basement at the time. One was called to the resident. This I know just because it's obviously close to me, so I can. And that will be for another discussion. It's not for that part is not for me to say. And I'm not trying to one up. You got to hear my heart. I'm just telling you that there is a lot of information that is not readily available to the public. So I'm just taking the wait and see approach. Saw a lot of nasty things on social media. That's shame on me for being on social media. There were a lot of assumptions were made. And unfortunately, I felt like it was kind of a male-female thing. And I want people to guard against that and just understand this one isn't about being right. It's about getting it right. And so whatever the justice system decides after they get all the facts, I just want people to have an open mind. Mm-hmm. And I'm serious, Drew Don, because we're so quick to, with limited information, and have things based on optics, paint things a certain way. And by no means should we use anything that's transpired in the last 24 hours to validate or vindicate job positions on staff, right? There's just a certain level of people decorum that we've got to use. This isn't about the job situation. This isn't about anything other than a family that is going to go through a very difficult situation with kids involved for whatever the reason. And, you know, I try to reconcile what I think I know, what I do know, what I want to say, what I can't say, what I have to be patient to say, and all at the end of the day know that real people that I care about are involved. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot. I just, and I mean, we'll obviously take calls. I can't remember the number off the top of my head. It's 888 something.
638-4876.
638-4876. I just would ask for patience and a little care and concern, because I think it's interesting, Andrew, whenever real life happens, I think, to people and they're in vulnerable positions, it's strange how there's kind of this human need to validate what it is that we've thought all along or what we believe. And sometimes it just rarely is that the time, right? It's like you gotta pull back a little bit and look at it in its totality and actually see what's going on for everybody involved.
Don't just see what you
want
to
see to validate your thought process, because there were a couple of other adults there, and I do know one was another was called to the residents to help alleviate the situation before it escalated. Like, those are things that I know for a fact, right? So, I mean, I guess we'll see what people want to share, what people are willing to share. But at this particular juncture, as I look at, a family that I care an awful lot about, and on a personal level, a coach that is an extremely good friend of mine, you're just hoping for the best in a situation like this.
A couple of days ago, not only I, but we, and I would even venture to say Husker Nation, lobbied to keep Mickey on staff. It was 100% based on coaching, right? But as we talked to you this morning, of course, everything changed. This is something that I always say about social media. It goes to show, regardless of what you see in the media or what you think you know about a person, you only know that person based on what you're being shown. So in my case, my relationship with Mickey Joseph is what I see in press conferences, how I saw him coach on the field, how I saw him handle recruits. And it was 100% based on coaching. But you don't know what's going on in somebody's life behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And I agree to your point 100% when you say patience, because patience needs to be taken here. I use the words authentic and genuine to describe him as a coach, and I think those terms can be looked at a couple of different angles.
Yeah.
When on the one hand, authenticity is everything you are, everything that you stand for. And then on the other hand, it could just be pieces of somebody's life. So don't dive too deep into what people have said about Mickey Joseph over the years, for one. Handle the situation with grace, because I'm a man of faith. I'm hurt for the people and the parties involved here. I really am. And I'm an outsider looking in. I don't even have the same relationships that DB has with the Joseph family. And I pray for those affected in this matter. And my biggest point of emphasis here is, before speculation happens, before assumptions are made, I want to hammer this point home. Before you speculate, let the facts come out and tell the story. Let them surface. Don't just sit back and start making up what the story you want or think that should be told, because you hear something here, you hear something there. Let the facts surface. And then accountability can follow if it should follow.
Yeah, I think in this particular case, Drew Down, it's awful complicated, because I think there's going to be a fine line. I'm just going to say this. There's a fine line between what we should know versus what we need to know versus what we ought to know. And for, I think, the family involved, how can I say this? there's a lot of layers that they would have to unpeel going back to tell the whole story. Hopefully this is on the fly. This is live radio. But that's really what I'm trying to say. And I don't know if the family would want to or should do that. I'm just an innocent bystander that cares. But in my opinion, in order to, I think, tell the complete story, if they want to, it's a private matter, but it's a public figure. So the fine line that they have to walk is, as a public figure, what do I want to do to either validate or vindicate whatever it is people think about me, versus I need to protect my family going forward because we have young people involved. I mean, just imagine balancing that dynamic. And I don't care if you're Mr. or Mrs. Joseph. Do I double down and say face for me at the expense of us? I don't envy that task. I don't envy that discussion. But I just think I can safely say with 100% accuracy, it's bigger than the moment that escalated yesterday. And I think it's such a private deal.
And privacy is something that just hardly exists anymore, which is a shame.
So that's the thing that, like, if you're asking me, like, golly, why are you so emotional? Well, yeah, it's obviously a very good friend that I literally just talked to.
Right.
Roughly, as I piece this thing together, 10 minutes before this escalated, which he appeared to have I don't know. I'm not going to speculate there. I just don't know what I would be willing to do. Do I just shut it down and say damage done and try to and piece it together, or do I want valid? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I really, really would just caution people to just kind of take a step back in its totality. And it's okay to not have a strong opinion. It really is. Because it's easy to drum up social media and people can look it up later, and there are young people involved, and you have some strong-willed people, and you have some people that are in some difficult spots, right? Mainly folks that were in the house at the time. So it's a lot going on. What to say, what not to say. It's a tough situation all around.
And when I said privacy doesn't exist anymore, which is a shame, I'm not saying privacy of the incident so that it gets, brushed under the rug. I mean privacy for the family. Yeah. And in this case, when you're talking about a high-profile figure in the city of Lincoln, it's going to be hard to
Well, even reading the initial police
private
report, right? Typically, it's not something they do in a situation like this, but given the high-profile
nature of the incident,
it is very, very, very difficult.
You said a great point there, though, DB, because caution. You used the word caution. We should all take caution and care and show respect to the parties involved
These
here.
are real-life people.
And if you need help again, or if you know somebody that needs help, visit the Get Help tab on the Nebraska Coalition webpage. The number to dial is 888-799-7223 or text START to 88788. But, we just really wanted to approach this delicate situation with as much caution and care and respect. I mean, respect is a big thing here, something to grasp onto, because not only does respect need to go to the audience, but more importantly, the parties involved.
I get it, man. It's a tough situation, and I just, again, the moral of the story is take care of one another without it being at somebody else's expense.
We'll take a short break. Coffee and Cream next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back. Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. And I want to just touch on one thing before we move on. DB, I want to say thank you for sharing your perspective. I know the audience out there appreciated it too.
You're welcome. I don't know what to say. Like, I don't, those are not always.
They're not easy conversations.
And they're not comfortable, but I think all that, it's just what I would ask of anybody, almost just whatever you are, like just be that. And then, the rest will sort itself out. Like, it's a long 20 hours. And I have to do better, right? Because I'm one of those guys, AR, that I'm typically going to always say, okay, what can I do differently? Because it can't always be somebody else's fault, right? And I had to learn that the hard way. And so when I'm reading and listening and fielding calls and texts, it's like I can't be mad at those people. I've got to be better with being able to use my colander or strainer or however it is, that sifter that you shake all that stuff out, you keep what matters, and you get rid of what doesn't. And I just don't want to give people power over the way that I feel just because I don't agree with their stance, right? So I'm competitive, so I look at that as a deal for me, like, all right, how can I be better? And it's stressful because I'm human, and I'm going to have those moments where, yesterday I sat outside and I'm just hung up with you. I'm sitting outside my kiddos' tryouts, and I don't want to go inside because I don't want to have any discussions. So I don't watch my kids' tryouts.
Man.
Because selfishly,
it affects more than just the people involved, because it affects the people so close to.
So then I'm not happy with myself, right? It's like he's talking to me about his tryouts, and I'm like, I should have been in there. I should have been in there. Why wasn't I watching his tryouts? Well, you know why I wasn't watching his tryouts? Because I didn't feel like I knew people weren't going to I don't know. I felt like people weren't going to respect the situation. And it was super volatile.
Well, attention comes from that too when you step into
I don't want, and that's
the
not
building.
that's not my thing.
And you don't want to get that attention for one, but at the same time, you don't want to have those conversations too. You want to be there to support your kiddo, and the back and forth that you had to go with inside of your body, saying like, do I go? Do I not? Do I go? Do I not? By the time you finally make a decision, I bet the tryouts were over.
I missed it.
Yeah, and like, man, that sucks.
That
sucks because it affects more than just the people involved in the initial party.
So then I overcompensate, right? And it's like, oh boy. And these are just real life things. I mean, I'm sure our listeners are like, whatever, but that's kind of how I feel about like the situation as a whole. The immediacy of what transpired yesterday is one thing. The effects going forward are a whole nother. That's why I always, even in Twitter discussions and when I get into these intense discussions or radio debates or callers or whatever, like I think one thing I always try to figure out is what's the long game versus maximizing in the immediate future. Like, do I want to count fast dimes or long nickels? And that's kind of how I want people to handle social media. That's how I want people to handle the coach rule hiring. And, like, it's all a delicate dance, and I think it's why I don't mind talking to getting other opinions, because occasionally I'm going to learn something. And I feel like the more equipped we are with how other people think, whether we like it or not, the better we can function, because I'm a coach at the end of the day, right? Coach in my household, coach on the field. I get coached here, whatever, with people that are smarter than me. And it's just like, at the end of the day, I want to know my opponent. Do you know why I watch so much huddle? I want to know the plan of attack. And sometimes it gets to be overwhelming, and I don't need to know that they're in queen trips 17% of the time or a 2x1 81% of the time. And when they do, sometimes I don't need to know that. But I do feel like I'm better equipped if I know how you want to attack me, which is why I like getting multiple perspectives. And I'm telling you, sure as I'm sitting here about yesterday, LPD had a hard time. I mean, from the time
Nebraska had a hard time.
Nebraska has a hard time. Coach Joseph and his
Husker
wife
Nation settling in on this news, it has to be difficult too. It affects more than one, and especially for you, man. I don't want to cut you off here, but
it's not about me, my guy. It isn't. I swear.
No. But I appreciate you sharing your firsthand account too, because not only does this hit so close to home for you, but you're right. It affects real people. These are moments that affect real people.
And I the only reason I told the old story in Lincoln is because it took some people with some courage that believed in me to give me an opportunity. And sometimes you're at the mercy of other people being honest. And that's hard, right? And so all these things were going through my head. As like I'm on record, man. Like I'm a Mickey guy.
I am too.
And nothing's listen, hear my heart. Nothing has changed. I am a Mickey guy. I think I know what yesterday was about. I think I know who he is as a person. I think I know what that family dynamic is like, and I feel comfortable saying, and I'm not afraid to say that. Like I'll take the heat later, if need be. I'm totally cool with that. But the nucleus of that family going forward, I think is my main concern, because it's about the kids. It really is. The adults will figure it out at some point. Mm-hmm. It's got to be about the kids. And I've sat next to those little boogers, man, and I've watched them interact. And there's going to have to be some real, honest conversations going forward. And that's the part that I'm curious to see. Do we just take one for the team, or do we really try to get this thing right?
Let's take a call here on line one. We have Michigan Lance. Michigan Lance, you're on the show. Thanks for joining us. Your thoughts on Mickey?
Well, good morning, Andrew and Damon.
It's great to hear from you.
Hi, Lance.
Hold on, maybe I got to get you up.
What's up, buddy?
I hear an echo, so it's kind of throwing me off. This is a tough deal to deal with. I wanted to talk to you guys about Michigan later in the week. Kind of real stuff died down. I try to be consistent. Damon knows me, and I try to be consistent about whether I'm talking about a public figure and somebody personally I know. And I try not to waver on the two. You know that about me, Damon, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, I've always been like, hey, whatever's going on in your private business is not my business. I always judge people on what I know you from professionally, not your personal life. And so, this is tough because we're not in that world anymore. Mm-hmm. It's a gotcha world. Let's get in everybody's business. And I don't know if it was the OJ case in '94 or was it Tiger Woods? I can't remember what year, like when we started to say, hey, let's go in personal. And we've been on it ever since.
I think it's just been the lighter fluid.
You have to say that again?
I think it's just been the lighter fluid of social media, like over the years.
Yeah. Right. And so, oh, that's better. I don't hear an echo anymore. Oh, well, yes, I did. So it's hard to defend people publicly because at the end of the day, you don't know what somebody is going through or what they went through and what they haven't gotten over.
I completely agree, man.
And so,
agree.
Even though
Michigan Lance, we appreciate the phone call. Thank you so much.
Zach, stay right there.
Stay on the line. We'll get to you next here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio. And then after we talk to Zach, let's dissect some of the new staff. Yep. Let's get into some of Matt Rule's new coaching staff. That's next on Hail Varsity Radio.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
back. Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, alongside Damon Benning, Andrew Rogers. Your calls now. We have Zach on line 2. Zach, let's get to you. Sorry we made you wait a little bit longer than you probably thought you were going to have to wait, but you are on the show now. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Zach. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, TV?
Hey, how are you?
Just living the dream, right?
Yeah.
It's one way to put it.
Yeah.
Hey, I just give you boys credit. Thanks for doing an awesome morning show. It's a very delicate matter. And I echoed. Give me 1 second. Sorry.
It's okay.
Shoot. Yeah. There we go. Cool. I just want to say, putting on a great morning show and attacking a delicate situation with with kid gloves and doing it the right way. There's a lot of facts that still need to come out, and it's a tough situation for involved.
Zach, I appreciate that, man.
Mm-hmm. I do too.
I couldn't agree more. It is it's super delicate because what you don't want to do is form opinions without all the details, and I think optics is a dirty word, right?
Right.
Because it means that you're formulating opinion on how something looks without having all the information, and I think it's tough.
Oh, man, it's tough, and it's the society that we live in, so we're surrounded by it every day. So that's the even harder part.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, oh, boy, man, like, life comes at you fast, right? No, how about our last 2 months, right? Like,
full speed ahead.
Life comes at you fast, and I think, it's important to surround yourself with people that are for you too. So, Shane, you got Michigan Lance.
Zach, thanks so much, man, for the call. We appreciate you.
I think Michigan Lance.
And then back on line 1. Sorry, Michigan Lance, we had to cut you off there. We had to go to break, but you're back. Thanks for coming back.
No, man, it's all good. Hey, I really thank you guys for having me back. So, domestic violence, right? So Damon knows it. He just talked about it firsthand. I know about the domestic violence. I've seen it in my life, right? And so I just called Suge, right? The first time I called you guys, Suge said, "Hey, what do you want to talk about?" I was like, "Well, yeah, obvious, the obvious Mickey." And he was like, "Well, what do you want to talk about? What are you going to say?" And I'm like, and that triggered me. And I'm like, "What do you mean, what am I going to say? Like, what do you think I'm going to do?" And he was like, "No, man, I just want to hear you say, Shane, you crazy." I was like, oh. So he was about to get a different Michigan Lance.
but you rallied.
Hey, thankfully you have a great sense of humor, Michigan Lance.
Well, yeah, I had to
he calls him
he
Sugar
wasn't.
Shane.
Okay, I'm like,
Suge.
And so, again, you don't know in the heat of a moment of something what you're going to do as a reaction or what somebody's going to do to you. And so you can't sit back and judge. And you can't be quick to judge. And you can't be quick to defend because you don't know at the end of the day, man. And this situation is tough. It's hard. It's not good. Like you said, kids are involved. Damon has spilled his guts on the radio for over 10-plus years, right? And we've had in-depth conversations where I have to say, "Hey, Damon, you need to take it back.
Yeah.
You got kids."
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they have friends listening and parents listening like, "Hey, man, that's not fair."
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately, we're in a world where we have to get into everybody's business, and the people's families, whether it's immediate or exterior, like, are affected by it. And then on a larger scale of sports, whether people want to believe it or not, like, we feel like the majority of black people feel like sometimes when a public figure does something, it affects them on whatever they're trying to do within that field or just in life general. And I've had that in moments in life. Damon, I'm sure you had that in moments in life. I mean, I remember what you talked about with your dad, how much he loved OJ. And then the OJ thing happens, and that affected him a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he didn't know him personally, but he represented a certain type of way. And, man, this is unfortunate. It hit home for me, Damon. I know, of course, it hits home for you. And, man, it's just unfortunate situation, and we just got to wait and see what happens when the smoke clears. But, man, I'm hurting for Mickey. I'm hurting for his family because even let's just say, whoever is the aggressor or whoever did something, like, and I'm not saying he did or he didn't, I don't know. But people forget, like, if somebody does something, man, that affects them too. And not saying that absolves them of any responsibility, but if something happens and somebody does something negative, man, that means something negative is going on within them, and that's the reaction that they give.
Yeah.
He brings up –
fellas.
Go ahead.
I thank you guys again. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lance.
Hey, thank you, Lance. Hey, he brought up a great point because
that's a good point, man.
He said exactly how I feel and the perspective that I have for Mickey Joseph here by bringing up the story about your dad and how much love he had for OJ before everything went down.
It's the
and
only
you don't know
reason
him
I'm a
personally.
Southern Cal fan.
Well, and you don't know him. I don't know Mickey personally, but I think I can speak for the rest of Husker Nation here and say people were polling for Mickey to be on this coaching staff, even to be the next head coach at Nebraska, because we saw what he offered as a coach. And, like, that's the love that we had for Mickey Joseph, or have for Mickey Joseph, him as a coach. And, that right there, if he had to pluck out what I'm trying to say out of my brain, Lance just did it.
It's delicate, right? And and you feel like sometimes you're going to be judged for supporting people that you love, but we don't really know the whole story.
And that's what I want to know.
And being unapologetic for people that you do love is okay, right? I don't think that's something that you have to explain from Scott Frost to Mickey Joseph to Bo Pelini to Deshaun Watson. As Deshaun Watson takes the field against his former team, the Houston Texans, there are people that love Deshaun Watson. That doesn't mean Deshaun Watson is without indiscretions. But real agape is unconditional, and I think you can, not to go super biblical on you, but you can love the sinner and hate the sin. Those two things can coalesce. Like, that's okay. And in this particular situation, trust me when I tell you, there's a lot we don't know. And the delicate line will be kind of what Michigan Lance alluded to. How much will the Josephs want us to know, how much we should know, and how much we should just have the privacy to let them do what they do, because we do know that he's a public figure. But the level of human decency that we have to have in terms of the next job up or not having a job now or whatever, like, domestic violence is on what it's bigger than that, right? Just a certain level of decorum that I just don't want to see us go into. And I know you can't police everybody, and people are going to do people, but we got to do better. We got to be better.
And everybody has a backstory. Everybody out there, especially those that are public figures, at one point in time, you can probably dig up a screw up.
Oh yeah.
And you named a lot of guys. I'll mention one more. I'll mention Hugh Freeze, who just got hired at Auburn.
You got on me a little bit. Not because I had an opinion, but I think you felt like you wanted to explain. I love the way you worded it. Lay it out. Go ahead.
Hugh Freeze took a lot of heat when he got the Auburn job by Auburn fans. And it was people that just continued to attack him for the past, not what he was doing in the present. And look, one mistake, this is something that I like to use and hold on to, and I'll push for others to do it, but do as you please. Again, all of this comes from the biggest heart is one mistake doesn't define a man. And just because something happened, in the past doesn't mean that you can't change. I'm all about giving somebody a second chance. And in Hugh Freeze's case, he gets to Auburn and is already immediately taking on a large amount of heat for something that happened years ago, and no one's taken into account what he just did at Liberty and how he changed and moved forward for the better. You mentioned right at the end of your last statement, be better. That's what we have to do as human beings. Everybody needs to be better. And for us to be better, attacking on social media, hiding behind a screen, hiding behind a keyboard is never the answer.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how the things that we want in other people, like that we either care about or coaches or, it's funny, to land the plane, and you talk about coaching hires and Matt Rule and the staff that he's putting together. The same qualities that we want coaches and people of teams and people that are associated with things that we like to exude, I'm not always so sure how willing we are as individuals to model the same behavior. Isn't that weird? It's like, we use these funny anecdotes and these examples to bring other people down to validate what we want in other people, and I'm just like, it seems like bizarro world. Like, you'll compromise yourself to say this about this person because these are the qualities you want. It's like, how about you show those? I like, you know what I mean? Like, right. I don't. It's like bizarro world sometimes.
And again, we want to.
People are flawed.
We want to approach the situation with caution, care, and respect, and we hope you do too. Nick Bahe is next on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Hulkbrenner's going to launch a three, and it'll go. The assist to Shireman. They dared him, and he buried it. Shireman.
Elevator play.
Ooh. That feels like a huge bucket.
Has been outstanding all tournament long.
7 points, 7 assists already for Creasa. Paluma driving and finishing.
Top of the hour on Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio. Alongside Damon Benning, I'm Andrew Rogers. We are powered by Currency, and Creighton basketball, at least commentating, is powered by Nick Bahe. He's on the line with us. Nick, thanks for joining us.
I love it. That's a good intro. That's good.
Hey, we're all here to hype you up. I mean, I'm a huge Nick Bahe guy. I know DB is too,
yeah,
and
sure.
I know a lot of people out there are. But, man, what a start it's been for this Blue Jay group, a team that came into the season with so much hype trailing them, and, man, they seem to live up to expectations so far.
Yes, absolutely. Especially the Maui tournament. Felt like that was kind of the date that was circled for the start of the season. All the games before that were kind of the ramp up, and boy, did they answer the bell. You know, to go out there and to deal with a couple of teams that are really athletic, really try to speed you up, really try to turn you over. And let's be honest, it didn't necessarily go great right away, and they were able to navigate those waters. And I love their composure, their body language. I've said it. And I heard a scout, I think it was a New York Knicks scout, say it in the preseason. He said, Creighton may not have the best player in the country, but they have the best starting five in the country. And if it's hard to argue that right now. I mean, you just go 1 through 5, and it's hard to go pound for pound and tail of the tape against another 5 and feel like the other starting 5 is better. The other starting 5 might have better individual dudes, but a collective 5, those guys are pretty solid, and I've been really impressed so far.
I got to take advantage of your global talents. I want to go to Arizona because the last 14 minutes of that game, efficiency-wise, offensively, they were a juggernaut. And listen, I know Coach Lusk is gone, and people wondered about Creighton defensively, but gosh, I feel like I should make that about Arizona and not Creighton. You know this Arizona team well. You and I talked about them last year in terms of how they could recruit and their versatility and Mathern and those guys. This Arizona bunch and what he's been able to do since taking over for Sean Miller, is this Arizona bunch for real for you?
Well, what's crazy, Damon, is if you think about it, the team you saw beat Creighton, that was basically the same team as last year, plus Ben Matherin, Dalen Terry, and Christian Coloco. You know, you're like, it kind of validated myself because I picked them to win the national championship last year, and I thought they were the best team.
Same.
And I watched them, and I'm like, yeah, see, this team was loaded.
He said, see?
Tommy Lloyd has done an incredible job with that group, and I'm with you. I'm not worried about Creighton's defense. To me, that was more about, you know, Kirk Creasa is a pretty good point guard. Listen, the way Creighton defends, you got to have a guy, and Ramey knocked down some shots, and Tabellis could as well. They make you take little 10 to 15 foot twos.
Yep.
That's kind of what they're inviting you into that foul line area where you're not totally comfortable. But Kirk Creasa and Tabellis and those guys could make those shots, And that's kind of what Creighton's willing to live with. And that's the thing about, when people think of good defense, they think of like Arkansas or Texas Tech, pressure, denying passes, turning you over. Sure, that's one way to play good defense. Creighton's kind of like just methodically boa constrictors you for 40 minutes in making you uncomfortable with the shots you are taking. They kind of lull you into a false sense of like, okay, listen, we're swinging it around the perimeter. We're getting into our actions. It's not necessarily tough to get into our side ball screen or our stagger action. But at the end of the day, they're going to force you into Kalkbrenner, and they're going to force you into a tough two. And more often than not, people have a hard time scoring, and they're not comfortable taking those shots. So I'm not worried about Creighton's defense right now, and I'm with you. I thought Arizona was lights out in that game, and golly, it's hard to like I said, it's hard to imagine that was the same team with 3 pros on it last year.
Hey, not only are you with DB, Nick, in that case, but I was with you in picking Arizona to win the national championship last year, and boy, was that a salty feeling. Watch them get knocked out in the Sweet 16, but even in the second round too, that was a true sweat.
Yeah.
Both Texas teams, right? And now they face another Texas team tomorrow, the second best team in the nation. Do you agree, though, with the ESPN matchup predictor that gives Texas an 80.5% chance to win this game? Are they that good? And will Creighton just have to shoot the ball lights out against this defense in order to win?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to quantify or think like he can do 80% chance of winning or all those things. I don't know. I mean, like, I think Texas, gun to my head, I'd probably say Texas should be favored. So if you want to quantify that to 80%, I don't know. Because I think on paper, they're another team that on paper, man, they check every box, especially with the addition of Tyrese Hunter, gives them another guy that can create. Chris Beard is going to have that crew ready to defend. They're one of those teams that for 40 minutes against Gonzaga, that looked like the best team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But when you expand and look at the rest of who they've played, they really haven't played anybody else. So what's hard is I sit there and I go, who do I think is the best team in the country? And there's a part of me that wants to say Texas, but, man, they've only been tested one time. And they answered the bell. I mean, they straight up kicked Gonzaga's you-know-what. And so with the thing that I like for Creighton, though, against Texas is the way Texas defends, they've seen that twice. It's not like – and I think it took – against in particular Texas Tech, I thought it took Creighton about really almost the whole first half. Well, I think in that game, if I'm not mistaken, they turned it over like 12 times in the first half and didn't turn it over in the second half. Like it was almost like a fighter sizing him up for 3 rounds, and all of a sudden he's like, okay, I got this guy's range down. I know what he's doing, and now I'm ready to go to work. That's kind of what it was like for Creighton against Texas Tech. And also keep in mind, in their closed scrimmage, they scrimmaged Iowa State. They defend the same way. So Creighton has seen that no middle, really track you along the baseline, tough pressure defense multiple times that I think is going to suit them well against Texas. I think Creighton's got a great chance to win that game, but I certainly can understand how on paper you would certainly lean towards favoring the Longhorns.
Let me stay with it real quick, even though I like to spread your basketball talents around the country. But let me stay with Texas real quick, just because watch them a ton, and obviously Bishop, that's a storyline, year 2 removed and all of that. But I like the way that Texas, their length and athleticism in the front court, they can switch, the way that they can play ball screens. If you're Coach Mack and you're looking at ways to get Kalkbrenner to be Kalkbrenner, he's going to have some tough matchups with the body types they're throwing at him. What do you think Creighton does offensively to get him those picking to the rims and pick and pops where he's shown that he can stretch you a little bit too? How do you think Creighton wants to utilize him offensively?
Yeah, well, I think it's huge because I remember asking Greg McDermott in the offseason, it might have been in like July. I was like, Mac, out of curiosity, I'm like, 78, 1 minute left. Where's the ball going? And he was like, probably going inside to Big Ryan. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, because you got a lot of options on that team.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that rung true when when it got to be crunch time, where did the ball go against Arkansas? Like 4 or 5 straight possessions. It went inside to Kalkbrenner. So I think that's kind of like when a huge part of what they want to establish, whether it's the pick and roll or just posting him up. I mean, the guy scores with a really, really high efficiency. So to answer your question, Damon, I think the biggest thing they're going to have to do is side ball screens are going to be hard, because I hope this plays well on TV. They're a no middle team, meaning their shoulders are basically going to be parallel to the sideline, and they don't let the ball handler come to the middle of the floor. They're going to force everything to the baseline, and then they flood to the ball handler and trap, and they rotate hard, and they're trying to get steals. So it's hard to come to the middle of the floor lobs. So what you have to do is you have to set middle of the floor ball screens, so there's not a way you can necessarily force it or keep it on a side. So I think where those ball screen sets are going to be vitally important. You're going to see a lot of middle of the floor lane line ball screens, and then I think also for post up opportunities, the timing of the entry passes got to be right now. You know, it's not one of those things you can't salt shake the ball and look around a bunch. Like when Kalkbrenner gets a seal, the ball's got to be on time, on target, because the ball pressure is going to be hot, and Texas is going to be working an active or to front and move around. And if you saw what they did against Drew Timme, they came with a lot of late doubles where if the ball would go into Timme would maybe peck dribble 1 or 2 times, and boom, he would come Marcus Carr or Tyrese Hunter or someone else. And so Kalkbrenner has to understand that a late double could be coming as well. And so he's going to have to make a quick move and be able to feel that. Again, the good thing is that Creighton's had a long layoff here and a lot of time to get prepared for a lot of these things. And Coach McDermott's good at getting those guys ready for that. But I'm with you, DB. You have to find a way to get Kalkbrenner the ball, because also throwing the ball in the post is a good pressure release. Like if they're pressuring the ball and they're denying wing entry passes, that lane gets wide open for a post-up. It's a good way to kind of release some of that and throw it into the big fella.
You know, I'm a huge Carolina guy, so I think Caleb Love, and Carr has some love in him. He's streaky, but he shot the ball better. Are you convinced or still too early that he's going to be that guy from behind the arc?
I don't know. You're right. At Minnesota, he was a volume scorer. You know, like if you just looked at the final box score, you're like, oh, Carr had 24, like 22 shots. Yeah. Or, you know what I mean? Like
he's got some love to him.
Yeah, there's no doubt. That's how Caleb Love was. If you go look at how many shots he took in the NCAA tournament. It's a lot of 19, 20, 21, 20. I mean, he took a lot of shots down the stretch. But listen, they went all the way to the national title game. I don't know if I'm convinced. I mean, I'm a big believer over the course of time, you are what your percentages kind of say you are. That's not to say you can't have a day. And that's not to say that you just let a guy, line one up. But I also think Coach McDermott's pretty big on playing percentages and historically who you've been. And if they feel like they're, maybe want to live with Carr, some tough threes or whatnot, they might be able to do that. But I'm with you. Carr's one of those guys. I like Carr a lot. Good-looking dude in person. He's long. He's smooth. I mean, he certainly can score, but efficiency has never been something that I've necessarily kind of attributed him to when he plays the game scoring the ball.
Hey, we're chatting with Nick Bahe, Fox Sports college basketball analyst and Creighton basketball alumnus right now on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio. You can follow Nick Bahe at Nick Bahe, B-A-H-E. And Nick, being an alumnus, it must be pretty fun commentating and watching this team produce like everyone expected. Someone else that shares that enjoyment, though, and I love witnessing it on TV, is Coach McDermott. And based on conversations you've had with him or what you can pick up on via body language, how much fun do you think he's having right now coaching this team this year?
A ton. I think he loves this group. I really do. I think he had a fun time last year with them when they were young and they didn't know any better and they kind of just did whatever they were told to do. And I bet that's fun. And Damon would know this as a coach. Maybe one of the most rewarding things is watching people take coaching and then you don't necessarily have to go remind them of this, that, or whatever. So I think he likes that he's seen this group grow and mature into a group that he doesn't necessarily have to coach every single play, where last year he did. I think he trusts this group. They're a really good practice group. I know that one of the things that's been a little bit interesting to me is that the bench production has not been what I'd expected it to be.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
Farabello has not shot it well. Sharif Mitchell still doesn't fully look like he's settled in and back to in that rhythm and game flow, which I think sometimes we think is easier to capture than it really is. Frederick King has done well, but he's still young. And then Mason Miller, he's really the one guy that's been rock solid off the bench. But I think to get back to your question, Andrew, I think one of the things that's been that Coach McDermott has enjoyed, but also has maybe driven him a little bit crazy, is just how competitive practices have been. I think sometimes he gets frustrated, like, man, why aren't my starters, they should be scoring more. They should be getting stops more. And it's like, well, when you got Mitchell, Farabello, Stoltzberg, Mason Miller, and Frederick King in your second five, like those, you're going to have your hands full in multiple games. I think it was John Higgins told me that he refed a closed scrimmage for Creighton, and the starters versus second five, they played 20 minutes, and the score at halftime was 54-50, which is like, whoa, that's a big time starting five there. But no, Coach McDermott. Coach McDermott's really enjoying this group. I think he trusts this group. I think Baylor Shireman has come in and I added a layer and a dimension that he really likes and trusts as well. It's funny. We always talk about how players can improve. Well, coaches can improve too. Yeah. And I think Greg McDermott is the best he's ever been as a coach right now. He is at the top of his game, and I think he's showing you why with what he did with that group last year and how they've started this year.
Hey, let me ask you, since the Big Ten shares you under that Fox umbrella, which I love because you get to double dip, they were on the lips of many, and I don't think people saw Hood, Shafinu, and some of this evolution in the backcourt. How scary is this Indiana bunch? As I watched them annihilate Carolina last night, that front court, saucy. They got length.
Yeah.
What are we talking about with this Indiana team in the Big Ten?
What we're talking about is if they get any Jalen Hood, Shafino, whoever, if they get any consistent guard play and perimeter shot making, it's a Final Four team. I mean, that front line. Yeah. Race Thompson is like an old school 1980s power forward. Just kind of kick your you-know-what, rebound. He plays really well off of Trace Jackson Davis. And I don't know if Damon or Andrew, you guys ever seen Trace Jackson Davis in person? You ever seen him live?
No, I just watched. Big body type, strong?
Oh, man. He blows you away in person. He's long. He's light on his feet. He is the real deal in person. And when you're talking about a guy that can score, can distribute, when he gets on that right block, so he's looking over his right shoulder with his left hand, and he can pass and he can score, it is about as dangerous as it can get. He can block shots, so can Race Thompson. He's really good defensively. So, the thing that's there, sometimes we get caught up in the three-point shot, and listen, it matters, but sometimes basketball is a game of, easy baskets. Who gets more easy shots at the rim and who makes it harder for the other team at the rim. Well, every game Indiana plays, they're in a good position to win that battle. They're probably going to get a lot of easy shots at the rim, and you're going to have a really hard time scoring at the rim with that front line. So I'm a huge fan of Trace Jackson Davis, and I think that team showed you last night when they put it all together. Good Lord.
Nick, they only have two guys that play more than 18 minutes that shoot under 50% from the floor right now. I know it's early, but that just speaks to your getting quality shots, even though they don't, outside of Cop, they don't light you up from behind the arc. But, man, that's an efficient bunch.
Well, because when the ball, you're going to play Trace Jackson one-on-one in the post, that's not a good decision.
Yeah.
But
Leaky Black found that out last night.
That's right. So that's the thing of why you get these baskets. It's start with the dude you have to respect and you have to honor, you have to game plan for, and you probably have to send two at. Anytime the ball goes into Trace Jackson Davis, if you don't send two, he's going to score. And if you send two, he's going to find someone diving to the rim, across the floor, and a skip pass. You get easy baskets, they take away easy baskets, and they have a dude that you have to send probably two defenders at. And when that's the case, you're probably going to find open shots.
I saw both Andrew and I saw Coach Hoiberg at the presser for Matt Rule in attendance, and such a class act. And they're coming off annihilating FSU, and I'm not sure what happened to Coach Hamilton's bunch in Tallahassee. And they hammered Boston College, who Maine had beat earlier, so I wasn't as surprised. But what's the believable meter with Coach Hoiberg, and how – you're not going to get that from Kisei Tominaga every night, but how they've been able to function thus far, especially with Derek Walker coming back.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key thing is with Derek Walker coming back, I think this team really, really goes to another level offensively. Just because, Sam Griesel is he's a converted point guard. He's a good point guard, but he's a converted one. And then the only other ball handler on that team, notice I didn't say necessarily point guard, but a ball handler is Bandamel. So they lack a lot of creators. But Derek Walker being back into the fold, he gives them another guy that can create offense, whether it's him scoring in the post, him passing, and they need that bad. Like sometimes when they were playing without Walker, you just were kind of looking at it, and to me I was going, unless you post up Griesel, how are they going to gain an advantage for those dominoes to start falling on a draw two, kick, extra pass, whatever? Like they struggle to do that, but Derek Walker gives them another dimension. So I think with Derek Walker, it's all of a sudden offensively things look a little bit different, and it's just this year's team. Last year's team, to put it politely, didn't even come close to the level of competitiveness, toughness, physicality that is needed to even think about winning at a high level. They were really, really woefully short in those areas. This year's team's different. And Coach Hoiberg even told me that before the Pine Bluff game. He was like, listen, we're going to have to be I had it in mind, but we're going to have to be a scrappy, tough-minded group. And that's how they are. Jawan Gary, Blaze Cada, Sam Griesel, Bandamel, those guys are like tough dudes. And so defensively, I think they're going to play hard, Damon. Like, they're going to play hard. They're going to do the right thing. I don't think they're necessarily going to have selfish guys or anything like that. It's just it'll be interesting to see how much Wilcher and Tominaga can continue to knock down shots because ultimately, it's amazing how things look different when you're knocking down those threes. Yeah. But I don't know, Damon. The believability, it's still, this team still has a long ways to go. But they play hard. They compete on the defensive end of the floor, and Derek Walker makes a huge difference for them offensively.
Nick, you were on the call for KU Texas Southern the other day, and
meet me at the rim.
And we probably heard something like that. But
yes.
Texas Southern, of course, not a team to really boast about, but you did get to watch the defending national champions speak to KU this year. Are they a good enough team to pull off a repeat, or are you seeing some holes that still need to be filled with that Jayhawk bunch?
I'm still seeing some holes, as much as hopefully Bill Self's not listening to Coffee and Cream right now. But I'm still seeing some holes. They're having to play. A part of what Bill Self does is they need to have a big dude in the middle that they can throw the ball into and establish inside, whether it was Azubuike or David McCormick last year, and they don't have that guy right now, guys. They're having to play KJ Adams at the 5, who's 6'7" and not a shooter, so they're playing small ball, but they're not reaping the benefits of stretching you out and being able to shoot the 3. So, to me, they need to have one of their freshmen emerge in that post presence area, which is, we're a month into the season, and that thing still is a little bit of a work in progress. And then Jalen Wilson has been awesome, though. I mean, there's not too many dudes that have been playing better than that guy. Oh my God, he is really taking that next step. But they're a little bit like, they're a little bit like Nebraska in the sense of like, Grady Dick needs people to create a shot for him right now. Like, Jalen Wilson can create his own offense. DeJuan Harris is more of a creator for other guys, but he's not going to go get his. So sometimes offensively they lack like a third guy that can go create offense for himself. So that's another hole. So yeah, I think they got some deficiencies. Bill Self has a way of finding guys, getting them to improve as the season progresses. And they need one of those young bigs to step up. But that's the big hole inside, guys. They can't go the whole season playing small ball 5, KJ Adams, and think they're going to have a lot of success.
You're the man, Nick.
Bah, thanks so much. Gabinet up next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Guess who's back? Back again.
We are back on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. Alongside Damon Benning, I'm Andrew Rogers, and on the phone right now we have head coach of the Omaha men's ice hockey team, the Omaha Mavericks, Coach Gabinet. Coach, great to hear from you. It's always great to talk to you.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys.
Hey, good morning, Coach.
Hey, Coach, this team just got done taking down the defending national champion. They snagged a dominant win over Mankato to open the year. 1-1 in every NCHC series thus far. How happy are you to see results like this so early on in the season?
Yeah, the guys have been doing a great job. It's just tremendous to watch their development so far this season, and we got 12 new guys, so you're always a little bit, there's going to be some growth phases to that development there, but they're really coming along.
Coach, how do you gauge, kind of where you want to be? Late December, early January, you want to be skating, playing your best hockey. How are you kind of ramping up to get to where you think you need to be in an uber tough conference?
I think that's the key phrase. Just, we got a tough conference, so you got to go kind of week to week, day by day, and not get too far ahead or too far in the past. And especially with the new group, just give them small objectives. We kind of break down the season into little segments. We've got 2 weeks left to go before the Christmas breaks, and that's where our focus will stay here down the stretch till the break.
Coach, you mentioned the new group. Plenty of returners on this roster as well, though, too. One being Jack Randall, who has been absolutely electric this season, both offensively and defensively. In fact, the team's top 6 stat leaders are returners. I mean, what does that say about this program when it comes to development?
Yeah, and Jack was a guy, he played his first year at Michigan. We were fortunate to get him, and you've been around the program a little bit, Andrew. You know just how hard that guy works and how every day he shows up and brings his best, and not only on the ice but as a leader. And he's a great guy for these guys to role model, and he's getting it done on the ice. I'm so proud of him.
And, he's kind of been a silent leader, too, in the past. Like, when he first arrived, it wasn't like he was this big loud vocal voice. But now, it just seems like he really took a step up, a big leap from last to this year.
Absolutely. And again, he's still a silent leader, but I think that's the best by leader to lead by example. But he is getting more vocal and more comfortable in that role. And when you perform like he's doing on the ice, it's guys pay attention and guys listen, and he's definitely got the respect of the room.
To make a run, you've obviously got to be sound defensively and be good between the pipes. Progressively getting better playing defense in front of Jake. How would you kind of assess where you guys are defensively, as you do like to play some transition hockey?
Yeah, and just like you mentioned, the goalies. We had 2 kind of a little bit unknown goalies, Jake transferring from the Atlantic League and Simon coming as a freshman. And man, have they ever gotten better as the season's gone along. And Rob Couturier, our goalie coach, done a great job with those guys, bringing them along. And you can just tell from the first weekend to now they've taken some huge steps in the right direction. And then you got to play well in front of them, like you mentioned, too. We got some younger D-men back there with Jacob Padilla, Joachim Lemay, and Victor Mancini. Those guys are all underclassmen, and they're really, again, developing and taking strides and getting better and better.
And, Victor, of course, getting drafted last year, what has been the biggest improvement you've seen in his game from freshman to sophomore year?
Yeah, we knew what we got in him. He was kind of a late bloomer a little bit, and we recruited him from a young age, and we knew he was just going to continue to evolve and grow. And man, he's he probably eats our biggest minutes back there. His nickname's Moose for a reason. he can handle a lot of minutes and play a real physical game. And now he's just, you can tell his game's calming down. He's making simple, efficient plays. He can really skate. And for him getting drafted, I think was a real boost and testament to what he's done so far. And I know he's not satisfied. He's going to keep on working.
Coach, everybody talks about your relationship building and how good you are with players when you get a chance to sit down and talk with young men. You're recruiting, obviously, international. As you look at the roster, you've got the flair. You can stay in states as well. When you look at recruiting for this program relative to the conference, do you feel comfortable with where your footprint is?
Yeah, we got a big footprint. So we're it's not being in a hockey hotbed of Nebraska, but we did just land a verbal commit from a local Lincoln Helm, which is pretty exciting for us to get an Omaha kid coming to the program down the road. But like you mentioned, we do go everywhere from Minnesota to Canada to Europe, and that's kind of just the nature of the business, where we are and geographically, and where you got to find the elite players to compete in NCHC.
Coach, this weekend, Western Michigan, another ranked opponent. It just seems like it just keeps piling on at this point. But what have you seen in Western Michigan this year, and how have you guys been preparing for this series?
Well, they're the number one offensive team in the country. So obviously we got to be smart with the puck and limit their offense here and keep them to the outside and make sure our details are dialed in and we're not giving them opportunities. A little bit similar to Denver, right? You just can't give those teams opportunities. A lot of times it comes down to what you give those guys and making sure they have to come 200 feet and make it tough for them to score.
Coach, been better on the road than you have at home, and some of that is obviously opponent schedule, but it is a battle. It can be a battle-tested team. You play a lot of one puck, one score hockey games. How do you like your team's emotion, kind of their temperament? This is a kind of a gritty bunch.
Yeah, I think the big heart and gritty is a great word for it. And I think we've been in a lot of one-goal games, especially to start the season. I think we had 9 in a row that were decided by one goal. So, and when you're in those type of games, you got to have grit, you got to have heart, you got to will the victory at times, and find ways to win. And this is a group that is committed to doing that for each other and for the program.
Coach, last year the motto was "Today Matters." Is that stuck and carried over to this season, or has that changed to something new?
No, I think it's stuck. It's just really important when, especially when you play in a conference like this, that you make sure that you have a focus on today. You don't want to get too anxious about what's to come, and you don't want to get too down on what's happened in the past or too high on what's happened in the past, and focused on today. And when you got high-level athletes, NHL draft picks, it's really important that we focus on what they do.
Coach, good luck this weekend. We wish you all the best, and we hope to talk to you down the road soon.
Love talking to you, Coach.
All right, boys. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
That's head coach Mike Gabinet of Omaha Hockey, a fantastic individual, and somebody if you saw just kind of like walking in the tunnel, he's Mr. Serious, but like low-key, Gabinet has a huge heart.
Everybody talks about how good he is with young people, right? So and it's not really, I think that's
he smiles a lot. People don't think he smiles a lot, but he does.
That's spot on because he's kind of intimidating.
He is.
I think.
And it also doesn't help that he overpowers you just by
he's a big guy.
his natural height. But yeah, I mean, we hit a lot of good points there, and we said this back on Morning Dump just a couple of weeks ago that this is a team that was supposed to be in rebuilding mode.
I know.
And all of a sudden, these young guys, kind of like the Creighton women's basketball team, are going to do damage this year, and then it's just going to get worse and worse for opponents in the NCHC.
Well, although the difference is in those teams is Creighton brought back kind of an experienced bunch. These guys, especially if that back line thickens up a little bit and they continue to play good defense to help Jake and those guys behind the pipes, I think they've got a chance because offensively, I think they have a little bit better skill than we maybe thought coming in.
I did not expect the scoring to look like that so far this season.
So let's see if the defense can complement it. And you have to be able to defend the neutral zone. You got to be able to touch and not allow guys to skate kind of free will. So I'll be curious to see, can you play good? It's the age-old adage, right? Can you play good open ice and still be good defensively? It's the equivalent to playing spread. Can you play good, tough defense? They're pretty good offensively in the neutral zone. We'll see what happens defensively. I think that's the key for this team. But I like the word he used, and I hope it's not just because I used the word. I'm a grit guy. Mm-hmm. I like the fact he likes the word grit.
Yeah,
because I think that's
bonding moment there for you.
Yeah, because I think that's what matters. Our kids at Westside, we take grit tests that measure grit. And it's Jedi mind tricks. We don't even let them know really what these tests are, but we get a good feel for what our team's personality is, and a lot of it is based on grit. I like the fact he likes it.
And the NCHC is such
brutal.
a tough conference to play in. And, look, this Mavericks team was ranked all last season. And this year, all they're doing is receiving votes at this point.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I would even venture to say that the start in the NCHC could be one of the best that we've seen in a while.
Are you calling your shot?
I may be taking a long shot, a long three, maybe a Jimmer three.
Andrew
but this team
Rogers,
is always very talented. But next, let's talk Nebraska volleyball with our main man, Jacob Padilla, here on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
You know the definition of a baller.
Last segment of the hour, but you can always catch us on Morning Dump to follow wherever you get your podcasts. You can also catch Benning Bites there as well, and you can catch the Sports Six-Pack a little bit later on. That's by going to Hurrdat Sports. But if you missed anything on the show today, feel free to go back to Hail Varsity Radio's podcast page, and you can catch the full show there. Let's welcome in Jacob Padilla, staff writer for Hail Varsity, one of our guys. And if you want access to Hail Varsity, make sure to get a subscription by using the promo code AR for a monthly subscription or DB for that yearly subscription, and you can see Jacob's work all the time. Jacob, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey.
Hi, JP.
Let's talk Nebraska volleyball because, we're getting closer now. We're getting almost to the day that Nebraska, being the 2 seed, takes on Delaware State, and they may have to overcome some adversity of their own during this NCAA tournament. The team's experiencing significant setbacks with the loss of Kenzie Knuckles, but how have you seen this squad readjust?
Yeah, feels like readjusting is all they've done this season. They've hardly been able to play with the same lineup, with everybody in the same roles for more than a couple weeks in a row before something has happened with injury or a decision to try to change something up, or so they've been having to do this all season long, and this is just the latest edition of it. It's really unfortunate. Kenzie Knuckles was a huge part of what they were doing, and obviously you never want to see a career end on injury, but they had to kind of adjust on the fly there, where it happened last Wednesday. They only got a couple of days to get ready, and then had to play 2 top 10 teams. So I think we didn't see them play their best. I think there's still some emotions were raw coming off of the injury. I think Cook even mentioned he thought maybe that had a part in Maddie Kubik's play, just how close she is with Knuckles and seeing her best friend go down. So now they've had a few days to kind of reset, to settle in with the changes that they've had to make with the new passers in the back row, with Ali Batenhorst playing all 6 rotations. So that's kind of, they're hoping that this week has been enough to kind of iron out some of the things that we saw against Wisconsin and Minnesota that led to some struggles, and hopefully they can kind of lock in here and rediscover the level of play they had, or at least close to it, going into that last week.
Safe to say that Hames and Badenhorst, like, their roles are kind of, I don't want to say disjointed, but like they changed tremendously kind of behind the scenes, right, in terms of rotations and how they have to play?
Yeah, so Cook kind of switched Batenhorst and Kubik in their spots in the rotation, just to kind of have Kubik in the back row for more rotations, since she's more comfortable playing defense in the back row. She's been doing it her whole career. So trying to make it a little easier on Batenhorst, playing 6 rotations for the first real time. She's done it for stretches early on when Cook was kind of experimenting with the different pins last season, but she's been basically 3 rotations all season long. So it's not easy to do that, to play all 6 rotations and still be able to be effective in all phases of the game. And I think we saw Batenhorst kind of working through that. She struggled a bit after playing well. She had like 5 solid matches in a row leading up to that last weekend. So hopefully she was able to kind of learn from that, be able to watch the tape and figure out. And then, like I said, Kubik struggled a little bit as well. Hopefully she's able to kind of bounce back, because they need her playing like the all-conference player that she is in order for them to make a run here.
In my first question, I was back and forth on, does Nebraska play tonight or tomorrow? But because I'm figuring out Creighton and Nebraska, trying to follow both teams. They obviously play tonight. I looked that up just so everybody could be sure on that. And I know probably people out there are like, they play tonight. Yeah, they play tonight, 7 o'clock. But, Jacob, this is a question that, I I sat back on my couch last night, and I just kind of reflected on Nebraska volleyball this season and the turnout that was shown from all of the volleyball supporters in Lincoln. With Nebraska hosting the first and second rounds out of the gate, how difficult is it going to be for some of these teams to come into Lincoln and compete here with a crowd like this?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the advantage of Nebraska being what the program is. You almost every single year you get to start your tournament run at home in front of the largest crowds in college volleyball. They lead the country in attendance year in and year out now, and it's easier to kind of get your tournament run when you can sleep in your own bed. You can go through your typical routine. You don't have to worry about travel, and it's a big advantage for Nebraska. And, be interesting too. Former Husker Aneshka Szabo is coming back with Kansas on the other side of the bracket there. They'll play Miami. So she's get a chance to kind of come back where it all started at the end of her career. She's had a really good season for the Jayhawks. So I'm sure she'll be excited. I'm sure probably the Huskers will catch up with her a little bit before the matches and everything. So she might find it a little bit easier to play in Devaney as a visiting player, but everybody else, this will probably be a little different experience than anything, particularly Delaware State. I'd be curious to learn what the biggest crowd that the Hornets have played in this season, or, I mean, just period in general. They've got a lot of upperclassmen. So that'll certainly be something they're going to have to work through early on, and an advantage for Nebraska.
Talking with Jacob Padilla, one of Hail Varsity's finest, and a guy that I like to collab with from time to time.
More often than not.
As we dabble in some high school as well. JP, just listening to you, though, how about juxtaposed to somebody you know real well, and Kirsten Bernthal Booth, and what she decided to do with her volleyball team in terms of not sleeping in your own bed and coming off the success and building some confidence off of Marquette and their seedings. Like, isn't it interesting? Because I know you like coaching strategy and philosophy, how you pit those philosophies against one another. Are you curious to see how each plays out, or is it relative to the opponents and not necessarily what you're doing off the court in terms of preparation?
Yeah, I think both these coaches have a great feel for their teams and understand how to get the best out of them. I mean, you don't have the seasons that these two have without that being the case. So I just kind of defer to the coaches that they know what's best for their programs, and it is really cool to see both of them able to host again this year. I mean, I started covering volleyball while I was in school at Creighton. Covered 3 years of that program when Kirsten was just starting to kind of get it up and running there. So it's been really cool to kind of follow it from afar, her rise and getting the program to where it is now, to where they are perennial top 20 team, have a chance to host more often than not in the first round. And so now she's becoming a veteran at this. She feels, I mean, they've got a lot of tournament runs under their belt over the last handful of years now, and they know absolutely how to handle it.
Plain and simple, Jacob, is this a team you see avenging their runner-up finish from last year?
It's certainly got a lot more difficult with Knuckles going down. They've got a lot of things to iron up. Cook was really excited about where the team was heading into that last weekend, but before the Knuckles injury. And he said that when she went down, like, they had their hearts broken. And it was tough to kind of turn around and get back up for those matches. So it changes this team. I mean, they've got the best defense in the Big Ten in the last decade, and Knuckles was a big part of that. So it's hard to know kind of what this team looks like. We've only seen 2 matches on short notice, and one of them was without Nicklin Hames as well. And her status is kind of up in the air. Cook said she played or participated in about 40% of their practice yesterday. so I don't know what exactly that means for her availability tonight or tomorrow if they take care of business tonight. So I don't know how much they'll get the challenge. I guess ask me again after this weekend to see kind of how they've been able to adjust with the changes and with more time on the practice court to adjust. We'll see what they look like coming out of this matchup. These two matchups, I guess, because it's hard to know what kind of this team is now with the changes. I think they still believe they can make a deep run, and that's the most important part. But again, we'll have to see how it plays out.
Jacob, I kind of feel for you on a funny note before we let you go. I know high school basketball starts, and you and I both agreed that Bellevue West is the consensus number one. We were talking to Nick Bahe earlier, and he was talking about Grady Dick and his maturation and only being 18 years old. And I was thinking, as we both agreed, the best player in the state right now is Josiah Dotzler. Hard to believe Josiah is a full year older and some change than Grady Dick. Good on Bellevue West and that team. And I feel bad, Jacob, that you can't start by covering high school basketball tonight, man. I'm sentimentally, you're tugging at my heartstrings, man, as you do your job covering volleyball.
Yeah, I'll get out to a game or two on Saturday. Have a chance to get to one of these kind of little mini tournament finals. So that time of year, you got to juggle around. Can't get everything.
Thanks, Jacob.
Thanks,
appreciate
JP.
you. We hope that everyone out there knows, too, no matter what reactions have been said on the show today, that it came from a great place. We'll see you tomorrow.